Hello and welcome to Hank Games Without Hank. My name is John Green, manager of the AFC Wimbledon Wimbly Womblys. Today taking on Derby County, spelled like Derby, pronounced like Darby, at least according to English people. I like to say things the way that they're spelled. Today we're going to be talking about how... Somebody asked this question. I thought it was a really interesting question. By the way, we're fourth. I apologize. I'm trying to get better at this game. It's just that I'm coming from such a bad place. Someone asked in comments, by the way, leave topic suggestions in comments if you'd like for me to talk about the topic suggestion of your choice. And also, by the way, in a stunning turn of events, it's raining in England. I can't believe I didn't say that. Thank God Darren Bent's on the bench. He's 47 years old. Just a word of advice to the FIFA developers. I know they're longtime fans of the Wimbly Womblys. Stop giving players bald spots. It's just mean. Why are you doing that? Right? Like... If 47-year-old Wayne Rooney, he knows that he's old and bald. You don't have to go that last mile of verisimilitude. Anyway, whoa, God, that was amazing. Did you see the scarf suddenly appeared in the arms of the supporters? We're playing a bunch of frickin' wizards. Today, somebody asked, what can I do to improve the quality of political discourse in the United States? And that is a big and difficult question that I may not have a good answer for, but I wanted to talk about it. But I also want to make sure that I get this Pokestop now that it's been 5 minutes since I last swiped at this Pokestop. I have a Pokemon Go addiction. I think I'm the first person who's going to need like an actual intervention to deal with my Pokemon Go problems. By the way, also, we're starting T.S. Eliot today. I think we'd all kind of forgotten that T.S. Eliot played for the Wimbly Womblys. But we need some kind of offensive spark, and maybe it's going to be in the form of England's greatest 20th century lyric poet. So we have really bad quality of political discourse in the United States right now. There's a lot of distrust about political leaders in the United States, about the government in general, and then there's, pretty ineffective governance. This is bad. This is worse, I would argue, than having... Oh, God. I don't even know what happened. I can't really see the ball because it's so dark and rainy. Also, the Derby County players' jerseys say "just eat," which is a strange piece of advice. But I'm going to assume it's some kind of corporate sponsorship. There's the Golden Child with a nice ball out to Wild Shot, who then just proceeds to give it away. There's a lot of distrust about the government. There's a lot of distrust about the candidates, especially the candidates for president. But I think also, congressional approval is at an all-time low. Lots and lots of people feel that the United States is heading in the wrong direction, despite some evidence that, that may be more about the way we... I mean, there are ways in which the U.S. is heading in the wrong direction, so I don't know if I want to say that. Oh, you got to say Akinfenwa puts that in the net 10 times out of 10. Disappointing finish there. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. But I think one of the reasons we think the country's headed in the wrong direction is because the way we talk about the United States is so relentlessly negative and needlessly negative. This is not a failing nation state. Oh! I'll tell you what is failing. The FIFA 16 Wimbly Womblys here in the second tier of English football. Really struggling. Despite our long-standing tactic of just cross it in from the corner and wait for something good to happen. Doesn't seem to be working at the moment. The first thing that you can do is you can vote. You can vote for candidates who are serious and who engage with policy seriously. And that means... There are Republican candidates who do that and Democratic candidates who do that. But right now, there is only one candidate running for president who does that at all seriously. I am a pretty... lots and lots of people would be horrified. Lots of people on the left and the sort of the internet left would be horrified by how moderate I am politically. But this is not... This presidential election does not seem to me... a particularly difficult choice. That said, you can vote. You can vote for people who model the kind of discourse or do the better job of the available candidates of modeling the kind of discourse that you think is going to lead the country in the right direction. That almost went in the net. I think voting is incredibly important, and it is really underappreciated as a civic tactic. Like, lots of people, talk on Twitter and they have debates online and offline with their family, and then they don't vote. And the most important thing that you can do in a representative democracy is vote. And even if you feel like the election is between two candidates who are bought and paid for by Wall Street or whatever, voting is still incredibly important. Not least because you're not voting for just the one job, right? Like, the down ticket elections are really, really important. And just because they don't get a ton of media attention doesn't mean that they aren't important. So vote, do your due diligence when it comes to doing some research into the candidates. Again, not just for president, but for other things. For the school board, a lot of those jobs that you think of as like insignificant elections, or who knows the difference between these two people, like, those are the people who are going to decide what kind of education your kid gets. You may not have kids, but what kind of education, the kids in your community get, which is still an important issue. And then the second thing I think you can do is try to model better political discourse. It's almost impossible not to meet hostility with hostility when it comes to our conversations, both online and off. When people are very hostile and aggressive toward us, we almost always respond aggressively and with hostility. It's just like, it is the default response. It's very hard to resist that default response, no matter how hard you try. However, if you can do it, it makes a big difference. So if you can find ways to respond to someone who's coming at you very hostilely without being snarky or without being condescending or without acting like you already know that you're right, and instead try to listen to whatever the concern is that's sort of like masked by the hostility, then I think we can have better conversations. You can flip the script. There's a great episode of the podcast Invisibilia about this topic of flipping the script, and I think that it's such an important thing to think about. And then the last thing that I would say is when you find places online where people are not doing a good job of talking to each other, they're not doing a good job of acknowledging complexity or nuance, leave those places and sort of vote with your eyeballs. When it comes to the kind of like media landscape that you want to look at, do not reward the people who ask, oh my goodness gracious, do not reward the people who are trying to benefit from your clickbait and trying to benefit from your fear and your outrage. If you reward them, there will be more fear and outrage, regardless of whether there is anything to fear or be outraged about. I think that FDR's famous line, "There is nothing to fear but fear itself," is more true now, or at least as true now as it was in the Depression. It is the act of feeling like the world is coming to an end that is making the world feel as if it's coming to an end. And it is really as simple an equation as, having confidence in our government. We have a pretty high functioning government in the scheme of things when you compare it to Somalia, when you compare it to a lot of other countries. We have a functioning government with, people who are not trying to destroy it. Oh gosh, we are not at risk of a military coup. We are not at risk of a fascist takeover. The crime rate is not at a crisis level. Americans remain, relative to the rest of the world, the United States remains a good place to live and a good place to do business. And when you don't think about that stuff, you really do, I think, end up rewarding these media outlets and these ways of talking about the world that, by paying attention to the quote unquote news, always ends up focusing on what is evil and wrong with life in the United States right now, because everything that happens that's good news happens in slow motion, right? Like the fact that American lives are longer and healthier than they were 10 years ago happened in slow motion. The fact that the crime rate is much lower than it was, it's probably up from the last year. We're not sure yet, but it probably is. But like it's much lower than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 40 years ago. That happened in slow motion. All the good stuff that happens, by definition, kind of happens in slow motion. The uninsurance rate going down, that happened relatively quickly. It happened in the last 4 years, but it happened in slow motion. We don't get news updates about things that say like, well, the percentage of personal bankruptcies dropped 0.0004% in the last day, right? Like that's not how the news works, but it is how the world works. And I think if we can find ways to focus on that and acknowledge that, then we can get a lot more civil about our discourse, because it makes us realize that like the stakes are high. They're not existentially high. And I think that's the most important thing to remember. Like when any candidate says, I alone have solution X or solution Y, that scares me way more than whatever their policy positions are, because it implies it implies this feeling that only person X or person Y can lead us out of some like horrific morass. Well, that's not the situation that we're in at all. And I think I think that's the most important thing to try to remember on a day-to-day basis. It's hard to do, especially since the news, doesn't want you to think that way, because the news doesn't benefit when you think that way. But it is the right way to think about the world, because it is the truth. Do we have time for maybe one? Can you throw it really far and then that? And then Akinfenwa from outside the box. Oh, it looks like it's going to be a standard 0-0 draw, my friends. I did my best, but I failed. On the upside, Eradicate has appeared on my Pokemon Go screen. It's a 0-0 draw for the Wimbly Womblys. And, when it comes to whether America is winning or losing, let us also consider the possibility of the draw, the most underappreciated result in all of sports. Thank you for watching. Best wishes.